Yes, there's something I want to share with the public that took place yesterday and took place today. We were supposed to be voting on Granite Park. The deal that was on the agenda today was supposed to be apparently accepted by the majority of the council, and it was pulled today, thankfully, because of a letter we all received from the district attorney who's doing an investigation regarding issues around this Granite Park deal. This deal, I want the public to understand, with Mr. Frazier was established in 2015. And this agreement, he was supposed to pay, the city was going to pay him $150,000 for 10 years. That was it. That was all the taxpayers were on the hook for, was 10 years for $150,000. His nonprofit was supposed to build $2.7 million of improvements, including a restaurant, basketball, and volleyball courts, and make repairs. He was supposed to pay all expenses, make all improvements, pay all the taxes, the utility, the maintenance, the liabilities, the insurance. The public was supposed to have access to basketball and volleyball courts and a walking path. The basketball and volleyball courts were never built. All improvements over the $10,000 was to be approved by the city, and yet he built soccer fields without city permission. The service agreement had required standards for bookkeeping, were subject to an audit. 2 years ago, he came before the mayor requesting $150,000 more. The mayor at that time, Lee Brand, requested that an audit be done, which Mr. Frazier agreed to. An audit was done. It revealed many financial irregularities and accounting problems. Required improvements were not made. The grass soccer fields were installed without approval. He failed to pay taxes, utilities, and his debts. He stopped paying his bills. He failed to demonstrate proper accounting. He had someone living on the site illegally. He failed to open to the public as required. And in essence, as I said, he stopped paying his bills. Subsequently, he filed a lawsuit against the city of Fresno, specifically naming Mayor Lee Brand, Tim Orman, Will McQuan, the former city manager, saying he had been hurt legally and it was due to racism. There have been ongoing discussions with, I guess, the city, represented by some council members, and they came up with this deal that was going to be voted on today. Now, this deal involved paying the developer, Mr. Frazier, $2.3 million to pay off his debts, of which the city was not obligated to pay off his debts. We're not obligated. We have no obligation at all. Part of the debt included $109,000 on utilities, $27,000 on state taxes he didn't pay, $33,000 on property taxes he didn't pay, PG&E, $23,000 he didn't pay. A $1.4 million loan that he took out and we were not required to pay back. He was required to pay back. A $56,000 personal loan to himself. Almost $300,000 in COVID-19 loans and PP loans, totaling $2.3 million. That was on the agenda today, to write a check to pay off all of those debts that we had no obligation to pay. None. Absolutely none. Now it gets even better, because in addition to the $2.3 million, the city came up with an agreement to front him $2 million on advertising from a billboard on the property at Granite Park. Mr. Frazier has an agreement with an advertising company where he's to get $80,000 as a minimum, more if there's more revenue over the next 20 years. Instead of him just collecting that rent, the city, in its infinite stupidity, said, we're going to pay Mr. Frazier $2 million up front, and the city will collect the revenue, and for that regard, he will let go of his frivolous lawsuit against the city, and in particular, Mr. Brand and the others that I mentioned. The city is also taking on several $100,000 of expenses annually that we didn't before. We are now going to be paying the water bills, the electric bills, the property tax, the maintenance, the landscaping, and the repairs, all of which he was paying in 2015, but now we're going to pay. No other developer or operator has had any kind of similar deal. I've never seen such an egregious betrayal of the taxpayer than this deal. Never. Now, in addition to the lease and giving him a lease for 20 years, the city also put in that he had an opportunity for 5 10-year extensions for this lease, 70 years. Now, mind you, the city put Mr. Frazier in default on his loans. The city attorney sent him a letter and said, you are in default. He is in default. Today, right now, he is in default of the agreement in 2015. And yet, instead of removing him because of his default and failing to pay his bills, this city council came up with an agreement to pay $2.3 million of bills we don't have to pay and $2 million of upfront money. So a frivolous lawsuit will go away. Now, to give you some context, in 2008 to 2010, there was a prior developer, MIL Granite. He purchased the Granite Park, did it with a loan. He failed on his loan. He was in default by the bank. The city also put him in default. But you know what he didn't get? He didn't get $4.3 million. They punted him to the curb, as they should have. They said, you're out. But something's very different here. He's in default. MIL Granite was in default. Terance Frazier's in default. But Terance Frazier was getting $4.3 million today. Now, Mr. Brand is not a racist, nor was Will McQuan. It's a specious lawsuit. What's the difference? Well, Mr. Frazier is also engaged to a council member here. That's been going on. Obviously, they've been in a relationship. It's public. And I held a press conference 2 years ago, and I said, there's something very wrong going on here. There's a stench at City Hall. And frankly, the stench has continued. Today, Mr. Frazier would have been awarded multi-millions of dollars, and the fact that he's getting married to a council member who resides up here, she would have been getting multi-millions when they got married. And it should also be noted that last night a fundraiser was held at Mr. Frazier's house for Councilmember Arias. The stench is disgusting. It was pulled because the district attorney is looking into this. I'm grateful to the district attorney. I appreciate it because she and her actions today saved the taxpayers from being ripped off for $4.3 million. What a disgrace.
All right, Vice President Esparza, Council.